when it comes to like especially your sexuality, like those wounds can run especially deep. Like you might regret like, oh, I shouldn't have cheated on that test. Oh, I shouldn't have lied to that person, right? But like we can tend to process and get through those a little bit better. But especially with like with our sexuality, that really is that's at like the core of who we are, right? So like the regrets and the lines that we crossed, like we feel those wounds in like a pretty significant way.
Physical affection is part of growing in a relationship. And it's natural to want to know where the boundaries lie, which that is where that question succeeds in actually being a good question. How far is too far is a question of where are the boundaries in regards to my developing and blossoming relationship. That's a good question. But if we ask it of like, how far is too far? How far can I go before I sin? That's where you're starting to get into the realm of like, okay, I'm looking at asking to objectify this person. How far can I go before I've actually crossed the line and objectifying the person? From day one, if you're objectifying the person, it's wrong. So, what is the point of physical intimacy before marriage? That's a good question to ask yourself. What am I trying to do with my body when I'm loving this person? Is this intended to arouse the other person or myself? Would I regret if I was doing this and then I had a nasty breakup with this person? Would I feel really bad that I gave this to that person? Because you don't know if the person that you're dating is going to be your person that you're going to marry. You should always have a conversation beforehand and put boundaries and rules in place in the relationship to avoid crossing any lines. And it can vary from person to person. You know, some people might say, hey, I don't want to kiss until our wedding day. If that's something that you want to do, that's fine. No judgment. But that's something that you need to communicate so that it's not like you get to that stage and you're like, oh, crap, I really want to kiss this person. It's like, oh, okay, if you set the rule, then abide by the rule. But I can guarantee you, whenever you get into those intimate moments in which you're sharing something that's going on with you and your body naturally wants to go more. And so if you don't set those rules early, you're going to cross them in the moment, especially if you're trying to create them in the moment of like, I shouldn't be doing this right now. And your hormones are raging and telling you like, no, you absolutely do want to do this right now. Why? Because God actually gave us a command in the beginning of Genesis. Be fruitful and multiply. It's written into your DNA to want to have sex. So it makes sense then that like in the moment you're like, nope, my body is telling me this. Okay, well, if I didn't set that rule for myself beforehand, then it becomes really hard to deny that temptation then.
It's kind of a reality that as you go through life, as you go through relationships, like there's a pretty decent chance that there are going to be areas that you kind of cross boundaries, things that you kind of regret, especially like as you're kind of approaching marriage. You might be able to look back at all of your relationships and be like, oh yeah, Susie from back in, freshman year, made some mistakes there, or you might think like, yeah, like that relationship really crossed some lines or that sort of thing. There could be things that you really solidly repented from, but were still like part of various relationships. Or like even just when it comes to like personal chastity, like dark places that you were at different points of your life, things that you really fell into hardcore bad habits or addictions, and sometimes even things that still kind of stick with you. And even in like future relationships, like those wounds are still going to be there because they're kind of deeper wounds, right? Even as you enter into marriage, like those memories and those wounds are going to influence the way that you do and can give yourself to the other person. Any sexual influence, like we kind of gave that sort of potential rule for how far is too far, is like, would I regret this? Would I regret crossing this line with this person? It's like there's going to be some element still of like feeling betrayed, You know, if you gave yourself totally to this person and then they ended up like dumping you and moving on, or like they ended up cheating on you or something like that, like you gave part of yourself in a very deep way. And that betrayal is going to stick, like really hit you a lot deeper than if they like walked off with your toothbrush or something like that, right? Because they're walking away with like, you gave them like everything. Imagine like a rough breakup. You crossed some boundaries, you went too far, you gave them part of yourself, and then you broke up in a nasty way. Like, you better believe when you're dating, like, with the next relationship, like, part of your heart's gonna be like, careful. Like, remember what happened last time. Like, remember how so-and-so broke your heart. Like, you're gonna be cautious, right? And if that's true just in, like, the simplicity of betrayal, imagine, like, when it comes to making that total gift of self, like, after marriage in sexuality, like, how much that's going to be there also. Like, careful, you remember when you gave yourself to so-and-so and they left you and they abandoned you. Even though we kind of like want to leave those mistakes and those habits in the past, you kind of have to acknowledge walking into a new relationship that they're still kind of there. And especially when you're entering into marriage with somebody, you kind of need to have that conversation with them about the fact that it's there. You kind of need to have that conversation of the fact of like, yeah, this relationship, this is how I went too far. And you don't have to go like super detail, but like I crossed some lines here. This is how, you know. I've struggled with personal chastity. You know, I had issues with pornography and masturbation in high school and in college. You know, this is where I'm at with it right now. You know, like you have to be honest with the other person, like as especially I'd say like kind of leading up to or at the point of engagement, but certainly before marriage. You kind of need to come clean with a lot of those things because that's gonna influence the way that you're able to give yourself to the other person. Sometimes we have the idea that like sexual experience, like knowing what you're doing is gonna be like an asset, like really impress the other person sort of thing. But the reality is like it just leaves us wounded. You know? Like that's something that should be kind of like explored and discovered together. And like if you walk in with that, with those experiences, like you're also walking in a much deeper way with the hurt of that betrayal. Every single one of us, even if we haven't crossed the boundaries into like pornography or masturbation, like we still struggle with chastity. We still struggle with the way that we look at other people, the way that we think about other people, the way that we are inclined to use or to love the other person, right? So like the other person's going to be coming into that relationship with those wounds also, even if they're like shallower wounds, they're still going to be there. So that conversation can actually end up being like a greater moment of gift to the other and a greater moment of like total vulnerability and sharing of self to go through like even those experiences.